Hi, my name is Amber Anderson. I teach leaders how to maximize their impact in a way that's authentic, joyful, and expansive through content, coaching, and community. Lately, I have been talking to a lot of leaders that are struggling with how to navigate what's happening in the world. Really, the question is, how do I show up for my team when I'm feeling so emotionally drained and, quite frankly, emotionally wrecked as I am right now? The world feels very heavy. People are tired, they're emotionally exhausted, and yet you still have to show up and be a leader every day. I have a very personal story about my own struggle doing this from when my dad passed away in March of 2020. And what I will say is, knowing what I know now, I would probably do pretty much everything differently. Um, the way I showed up as a leader during that time was not only harmful to myself, but it was probably harmful to my team as well. So I'm going to share my story, hoping that you learn some things from it and can avoid those same mistakes. So let's dive in. So, like I mentioned, my dad passed away. It was rather sudden, March of 2020. He had a medical emergency. He was in the ICU for about 2 weeks before we lost him. He actually passed the same day that our state was completely shut down due to COVID. We're in Michigan. And so, in a way, we were really blessed for the timing of that. Doubly blessed because he lived about a 3.5, 4 hour drive from where I live, but he was airlifted to a hospital in my city. So I was able to be by his side every day of his last 2 weeks. And those last 2 weeks led up to the shutdown for COVID. So when we entered the hospital on day one, everything was completely normal. I used to actually work for that healthcare system, so I was very used to like the hundreds, probably thousands of people walking around that healthcare system. Totally normal. Fast forward like a week, it started to get super weird. Hazmat suits and things shut down, and like we were the only people there, and the only reason we were still able to be there is because we had name tags on that said end of life visitor. So we knew dad wasn't going to make it. He was in hospice at that time. So we had special privileges. I'm going to have a drink of my mocktail because it's sober October, but it still helps me get through this story. Very delicious, by the way. If you want the recipe, message me. I'm happy to share it with you. So I lost my dad very suddenly over a 2 week period. The world changed very suddenly over the same exact 2 week period. Oh, and I happened to also be a people leader, leading a team of 12 at the time. So I made a lot of bad mistakes in the way I showed up as leader at that time. And that's what I want to share with you. So hopefully you can learn from them. So keep in mind, this was literally the very beginning of COVID. It was like normal one day, and then 48 hours later, it had kind of taken over the states, and just things were very weird, very uncertain. It felt there was just a lot of uncertainty and confusion. My company was part of that, trying to figure out behind the scenes what is happening, what are we going to do about it. We're a global company, and this whole time this is happening, I'm in the ICU spending time with my dad, but feeling torn because feeling like I should be with my team as they're experiencing this uncertainty and this confusion and not knowing what's happening. And at the very least, feeling like I needed to be really tapped in with the rest of the executive team while they were making these decisions and trying to figure out what to do about it. So while my company was amazing and told me, sign off, do not dial in, be with your family, that's most important. I took it upon myself to basically ignore that advice and keep dialing into meetings as often as I could. I think it made me feel like I had a sense of control, but also I wanted to make sure that I understood what was happening and could relay those messages to my team to help them feel a little bit more safe and secure in the situation that we were in. So my company did not put this pressure on me. I put this pressure on myself. So I learned that the decision was made that we were going to send all the employees in the company home for 2 weeks, which in retrospect is kind of hysterical, right? That we thought we were only going home for 2 weeks. So I was on the leadership call where that decision was made, and they were, kind of giving the marching orders, if you will, or the recommendations. Now gather all your team together, tell them to gather their things, enough for 2 weeks of work, send everyone home, effective immediately. I'm in the waiting room, the family room at the ICU getting this information. I should also mention that I had a manager who reported to me at the time who had been with the company for 25 years, fully capable of handling all of this on site without my involvement. But again, something in me made me feel the pressure that I was putting on myself. Nobody else was putting on me to like do it myself, do everything myself, control it all myself. So I gathered the team together, explained what was happening, had everyone gather their stuff. I ran to the office, gathered what I needed to gather. We all, quote unquote, went home for 2 weeks, which ended up being like 2 years, as we all know now. So they knew I was sitting by my dad's bedside as he was dying, yet somehow I was still dialing into this meeting, tell them to pack up their stuff and go home. Everything was going to be okay. So that was probably strange for them, first and foremost, that I was even there, right? But it was after my dad actually passed that things got really weird for me, at least. The whole time was kind of a blur, of course. I think it was for many of us due to COVID. But losing my dad, but then being stuck at home, like I wasn't able to see anybody in my family for months after that because of the shutdown. My mom's in a retirement community, so I couldn't see her. It was just me, my husband, our 5 rescue dogs stuck in our house. I couldn't go to work during the day. I couldn't see my team in person. So it was very isolating and lonely feeling for me. But that's kind of normal. I didn't really know how to soothe my nervous system and take care of myself back then the way I do now. What I think is not normal is I tried to fake my way through it. So lots of other leaders at the time were talking about, oh, we're doing fun like themes, like wear your favorite hat to the daily huddle. Everyone was meeting daily, even if it was just for like 15, 30 minutes to make sure everyone was doing okay and connecting, and doing fun happy hour themes and fun game nights. And like I said, the favorite hats and dressing up and things like that. So I'm like, well, I want to be a good leader. I want to show up for my team. I'm going to do the same thing. So literally days after losing my dad, I was trying to show up at these team meetings with this like joy and this positivity, and it was ridiculous. And in retrospect, damaging. One, it was damaging to me because I wasn't processing my own grief. But two, the example I was setting for them was you can lose a parent, an immediate family member, but bounce back, come back to work, have fun, wear a funny hat, laugh, and be joyful with each other. Totally not what I would expect of any of them. And it wasn't authentic. It wasn't sincere. I was completely trying to push my way through it. And I'm sure that energy came across. I did not do any favors to anyone, first and foremost myself, but also them, by trying so hard to show up as normal during that time. And that's what I see a lot of leaders doing right now with this weight of the world and this heaviness that all of my clients are feeling with, wars and turmoil and politics and just everyday stress and overwhelm, like feeling very emotionally drained, but feeling like they have to put on this brave face to show up for their teams. And I am here to tell you that is not the healthiest approach. Not only for you, but it's not the best approach for them. It's not the example that you want to set. Okay, but good stuff did come out of this situation. So I also want to share with you. At the time, I had been in learning and leadership development for about 20 years. I was also a certified coach already. I think I had 2 certifications at the time. So from a skill set perspective, from a leadership skill set perspective, I had all the tools and resources I needed. From a mindset perspective, I had all the tools and the resources that I needed. I knew how to manage my mind. I knew how to self-coach. I even knew how to feel my feelings and process my grief. I was trained as a coach in that space as well. What I didn't know how to do was soothe my nervous system, at least not appropriately. And honestly, I didn't even know the importance of that. So that led me down a path of adding this additional layer of support that I now provide for my clients because I needed to provide it for myself first. So I started researching, I got an education, I got an additional certification, and I now have this energetics bucket to the work that I do. So I help leaders with their skill set, traditional leadership development, their mindset, knowing how to manage their mind so they can actually implement the new skills and knowledge, And now energetics or like nervous system, emotional regulation work is that third layer. But really, it's like reverse order. So, thinking about my specific situation, which I think applies to lots of leaders in the world today, we can't appropriately execute on our skill set if we don't know how to manage our mind in a way that allows us to implement those skills. If we're having the self limiting beliefs and we're getting in our own way, but we can't properly manage our mind unless we know how to soothe our nervous system. So, what I mean by that is if you're dysregulated from a nervous system perspective, if you're hyper aroused, kind of in that fight flight response, or hypo aroused in the fawn freeze, I don't even know what I would have been at that time. Everything was just kind of a blur, but I was definitely dysregulated and didn't know how to get myself back in. I didn't have that knowledge. I didn't have that experience or that training. So I wasn't able to manage my mind well at all. And I certainly wasn't able to lead my team well. So the point of all of this is to say, one, don't be inauthentic. Don't show up for your team when you're feeling emotionally exhausted and emotionally drained, faking positivity. Yes, you have to be like positive, be part of the solution. Don't like burden them with all of the details of what you're going through, but be authentic, be sincere. If you're having a day, just show up kind of calm and grounded. Don't try to overdo it. They will read that as insincere and inauthentic, and they'll feel unsafe with you. But more importantly, take care of yourself first. Learn how to soothe your nervous system. I created a class actually called Leadership Resilience, how to stay calm and collected even in high stress situations. I'm going to link to that in the description. It's a brief, completely free workshop, and it gives you some of my favorite techniques to soothe the nervous system and really widen that window of tolerance. So one, when you're dysregulated, you can bring yourself back in right away. But two, the more you do these kinds of soothing techniques for yourself, breath work, meditation, tapping, havening, all kinds of things like that, your window gets wider and wider and wider. So the struggle doesn't feel as challenging. Sorry, I have a meeting coming up. If you heard that ding, I'm not going to edit it out, and I'm going to take a drink of my mocktail because this is a very informal video this week. So, long and short of it, take the pressure off yourself to quote unquote show up properly for your team when you're feeling emotionally exhausted. Be honest with them to a point of showing up in the appropriate energy, I guess, if you will. Again, you don't have to like burden them with all of the details of why you're feeling off, but you can at least acknowledge entering a meeting like, whoa, today feels kind of heavy. I'm just putting it out there. Looking forward to working with you guys and focusing on how I can support you best. I think that's going to be good for me today, and I could use it today. So let's dive in. You know, it can be something as simple as that, like a very brief acknowledgement of like, I'm feeling heavy today. I'm so happy to be with you. You're going to help me get through the heaviness. And that gives them permission when they're feeling the weight of the world as well. They know that it's safe to say that with you and that you don't expect them to fake their way through the day. So it's just be vulnerable with them, be transparent. They will support you and you will support them, and it all works for the best. And don't forget to download that class in the description to learn these techniques. And I dive a little bit deeper into the energetics work and the model we use for the mindset work. So it's just a really good resource to have, and it applies completely to this topic. So I want to make sure that you know it's there. All right. Thanks, everyone. I know this was kind of different than what we're used to. I hope that you found it valuable. If you did, make sure to like, share, comment, and I will see you next week.